Okay, we're on. We're back. It's time to. It's a very sad thing, but it's time to finish this. No, we're all very extremely disappointed that this just can't go on forever and ever, right? Learning the principles of reading, but we only have 3 hours left. And at that time we'll say goodbye, but right now let's get to it. Yes? Yes. So we're still on vocabulary, and we're really still in part 3. I know we should be in part 4, but that's okay. We had some good conversation a little bit earlier, and also, as we mentioned, comprehension, we certainly will get to some comprehension today, of course, but comprehension, you'll be learning a lot of those strategies in your other coursework. So let's finish up part 3. I skipped a couple of slides. If you're following along on the slides, I skipped a couple just about word families. There are a lot of words in English, but bless you.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
Is that it?
am I supposed to say?
Just one?
Yeah, I just do
Just
one.
one
Yeah.
sneeze and you're done?
No, my dad.
Oh,
My
okay.
dad always says, "Do we have to wait for 2 to 3?" I'm like, "No."
Okay, well, we'll know next time. Bless you and move on.
I
Not
commit
no
to
wait.
one.
Yeah. But have you ever heard of Voltaire? Yeah, 18th century French philosopher. He's the guy who said, "Every man is guilty of the good he did not do." That's one of my favorite quotes, I think. Every man is guilty of the good he did not do. Pretty powerful, right? But I like this one too. Language is very difficult to put into words. And that's what language is about, right? But this is something that you do need to know. Of course, I think everything is needed to know. But this is something that you'll want to either take notes on or put asterisks by or something. And not just for the test, but you will hear this terminology in the schools all the time. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 words. Okay? Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, bless you, words. Now, Tier 1 words are those basic words as it says. These are Anglo-Saxon in origin. Anglo-Saxon, which is really Germanic. English is a Germanic language, right? So these basic words that students already know through lived experiences. I mean, we don't have to teach. Bless you. It's not going to stop? Oh, we'll just ignore you from now on. Just let's get the bless you out of the way. And no, I'm kidding. We'll certainly say bless you. Okay. But, or salud, what do you prefer? Gesundheit? Santé? Okay. Yeah, again, you know, baby, clock, happy. Remember, we're talking about vocabulary. These are words that we'll want to teach regarding phonics and phonemic awareness, right? And fluency, that's fine. But to teach kids, baby means this. We don't have to teach that to kids, right? Second language learners, please remember, we're assuming first language, primary language for this. We don't have to teach Spanish-speaking children, bebe, que quiere decir bebe. They're still called bebe at home, I'm sure, right? So they know. Clock, happy, I mean, these are words that we know. Tier 1, right? Let's jump to Tier 3 for a moment. I know, I'm not forgetting Tier 2, I'm not. But let's look at Tier 3, bless you. Tier 3 words are these low frequency words, limited, I don't like that term, but really for specific subject areas, okay? So like isotope, where will we see that word? In science. We probably won't see it in social studies or math. I mean, you know, maybe at the college level we'll be talking about the mathematics aspects of an isotope, but isotope is there in science and really no place else. So it's content, you might want to write this down, but content specific vocabulary. Content, there's little hyphen in between content and specific. Content-specific vocabulary are these tier 3 words, and they're low frequency, as it says here. You don't see them all the time. They're really for a special area of that special subject matter, right? Does that make sense? Democracy. I know we hear that kind of, but in school, where would we find the word democracy? Social studies or history. We probably won't see it so much in science class. But these tier 1 words, you know, we'll probably see them more in stories, right? But now here, first of all, tier 1, tier 3, we have somewhat of an understanding of those. Tier 1, Anglo-Saxon origin, words we use on an everyday basis. Non-academic. Tier 3, academic, content-specific vocabulary. But it's these tier 2 words, really. Tier 2 words can be the toughest. Tier 2 words are those high-frequency words for mature language learners, and they cut across content areas. However, when do we ever teach a kid what however means? We don't. But that's a high-level word, and you'll see however in science, you'll see it in social studies, you'll see it in math, you'll see it in language arts, you'll see it in economics, you'll see it all over the place, right? Coincidence. Would we see coincidence in science? Possibly. Would we see it in social studies? Possibly. Math? Possibly. Absurd, industrious. These are high-level words that we don't expect 5-year-olds to be using, but they're not content-specific. Does that make sense? Now, in which areas do you think, or which tier do kids struggle the most, do you think? Tier 2. And I'm glad you said that, because generally we think tier 1, lower level, tier 3, highest level. Highest level is the one they struggle. No. They struggle more with these tier 2 words because we don't have to teach tier 1. These are words that they acquire in their everyday living. Tier 3, these are the ones we tend to teach directly because they need to know that term for this subject. Okay, we're going to be talking about isotopes. Isotope, I-S-O-T-O-P-E. Please remember this, write this down in your dictionaries. Isotope is this, and write it down. We focus in on that very content specific, and so then they lose out on these high frequency words that generally we need to kind of pick up through a lot of reading and a lot of discussion at a higher level. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So tier 1 words, how would you describe them? You can use the words up there or your own words. How would you describe tier 1 words?
Words that students already
Words that students already know through, that's right, because they've lived it, right? Good, very good. Tier 3 words are what?
They're content specific.
Content specific words, that's right, generally at a pretty high level, but definitely content specific. And so tier 2 words?
Everything else.
Everything else, very good. Yeah, that's pretty good, Randy. Yeah, I would agree. If it's not 1 or 3, then it's 2, right? Yeah, very good. Okay, can we have another response to that, though? What are tier 2 words? So if somebody just came up to you and doesn't mention tier 1 or tier 3 and they just say, what are tier 2 words? You wouldn't say everything else because there's no context for that. So let's pretend there's no context. How would you describe tier 2 words? High frequency words that, yeah, for mature language users. Wow, that's very good. Yeah, mature language users, yeah. Which one of these is probably the most difficult for our students?
Tier 2.
Tier 2, that's right. Tier 2 words have importance and utility. They have instructional potential. And this is really, you know, tier 3, we need to have those, of course, for very specific concept developments. But these tier 2 words, once they have them down, that will help them develop the concepts across all subject areas. My father, the entomologist. Oh, Bee, you look as lovely as a longhorn beetle lifting off for a flight. And I must admit, your antennae are adorable. Yes, you've metamorphosed into a splendid young lady. Bee rolled her eyes and murmured, my father, the entomologist. I heard that, Bee. It's not nice to mumble unless you want to be called a mumblebee. Isn't that good? The first day of 5th grade and my father tells me I look like a longhorn beetle. Oh, Bee shuddered at the thought. She absolutely detested bugs. Why does Dad have to be obsessed with insects? He wondered. Why not football or golf like most fathers? The answer was simple. Bee's dad was weird. And he had made the bee weirdest of all when he named her Bee Ursula Gentry. B-U-G. Kind of a cute story, huh? Let's look at that story again. And let's see if we can choose some words that would go into the Tier 1 level, the Tier 2 level, and the Tier 3 level. Yeah? And, I mean, I could have you pick out the words, but I tell you what, let's just have them pick out some of these words. So, think about it. Longhorn, go ahead if you want to write these down, because there is one more slide with some vocabulary. But longhorn, antennae, metamorphosed, splendid, muttered, entomologist, and mumble. Can you write those words down, please? So that you have them, or just have your partner write them down and then you can share. But those terms, longhorn, antennae, metamorphosed, splendid, muttered, entomologist, and mumble. Do you have them? Do you have them?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah? Do all of you have them?
No.
Usually when you ask a question like that, those who do, they'll say yes, but those who don't won't say. Okay, here we go. Hopefully you have them. If not, you can get them from your partner because we still have 3 more words here. Shuddered, detested, obsessed. Shuddered, detested, obsessed. Okay, this is what I would like for you to do. Work with your partners and put those words, longhorn, and the way they have it is really longhorn beetle, but let's just go longhorn here. Longhorn, antennae, metamorphosed, splendid, muttered, entomologist, mumble, shuddered, detested, and obsessed. Please put those into the categories of Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3. Go ahead, work with your partners. And again, I know we're just learning what Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 mean, but go ahead, based on our knowledge so far.
I would say that Tier 1, Tier 1. But you need to explain that's content specific because I have but well, yeah, but it's content specific because I would never put on a beetle together. Me personally, I wouldn't know what that is. Like antennae would be content specific, metamorphose would be content, and entomologist. Then it would be to modern antenna. Content. 9, 10.
And 10.
But it's like Mumble would be tier 1. Mumble is tier 1. What about Mutter? Mutter 2. And then Splendid would be 2. Okay, so the next one is Shudder. I think Shudder can be tier 1. I think that's more 2. I would say it's 1. The test would be 2. I would put Mumble's 1. Yeah, that one's pretty big.
See, tier 1 is like,
Yes.
so I don't even think.
I wouldn't think any of them. The only one I would think of Mumble would be 1. Mumble's on Dude, you even have I thought a couple of Bro, you messed up. I did. No. I brought some. He came in like halfway. We started.
Because he has one himself. I've never seen us many. I've never seen it, and I see 2 today.
They're losing 21 to 14% regional.
Do you think you got them?
On the box.
But you do have them in categories? I didn't say if you have them correct. Yeah? And there can be some debate about this. We could talk about it, but... yeah, should we see what they say here?
Except for
I was right.
told you, none of them were.
As I mentioned, Longhorn Beetle is probably different than Longhorn a little bit, but still it's pretty specific, right, to one area. So what do you think? Does this coincide with what you had, or are you genuinely upset and think they have it wrong, or?
Splendid seems a little too sophisticated for tier 1. Maybe you could switch Splendid with Obsessed.
Yeah, I feel like Obsessed has gotten a
But
little.
obsessed is more of like a verb.
Okay, well, look at this, and I should have pointed this out. I don't know, words of little importance, I don't know if they're really saying these are tier 1. I guess we're looking at 3 and 2.
Yeah, because shuddered.
Because, yeah, shuddered, is that it's certainly Germanic, Anglo-Saxon, but is that would you consider that a word that every child would know coming into school? Probably not. Although some would, you know. That would be maybe tier 1 or 2. I could see that. I even think maybe mumble. Mumble, probably most kids know what mumble means. They probably hear that all the time. Don't be mumbling, speak up some. But why is obsessed a tier 2 word, I think? Obsessed. Did you have obsessed in tier 2?
No.
Where did you have obsessed?
Oh, I did put it in tier 2.
You had it in 2? 2, yeah. I probably most of us put obsessed in tier 2. Why would that be tier 2, do you think? I mean, you got it right. I'm just wondering what you
I
thought.
mean, I personally, I feel like it's a little too complicated for it to be a tier 1. I mean, I don't see it.
What,
I don't
obsessed?
see your average 6-year-old saying you're so obsessed with games.
No, they're saying it's tier 2.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it doesn't belong in
Oh,
tier
I
1.
see, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what else then? Yeah, more complicated than tier 1, but not as...
It's not content.
Right.
Either.
You'll see obsessed throughout, right? That's not just a science term, or, you know, Ahab was obsessed, and so was Genghis Khan, and so was maybe, what was the scientist who was obsessed? Ptolemy maybe was obsessed? Right. Entomologist, did you have any problem putting entomologist in tier 3?
What an entomologist was.
What is an entomologist? A person who studies insects, that's right. So you probably wouldn't see that except for in a very content specific. Metamorphosis, really only in science. Maybe we'll see that
I said
in
we like to
literature as well. but-
bugging out.
Yeah. So are any of these, are you upset with any of these that, hey man, wait, no, that's not right? Yeah.
Isn't antennae too common to be content specific?
I don't know. What do you think? Antennae?
There's like a TV antenna, car
But that's
antenna.
antenna.
That would
Yeah,
be
but
singular.
It's
But
the
it's
same
Plural,
different thing.
it's the same word. You're right. I mean, that house has an antenna, that house has an antenna, although nobody really has antenna anymore, do they? But they used to when I was growing up, certainly. Antenna, well, so the block is full of antennae. You're right, but I don't know. So are you thinking that should be more tier
Tier 2.
2?
He's pissed off.
I'm sorry?
He's pissed off.
Oh my gosh, really?
I don't know. I
You
think
just
it's
said
fine.
that.
Put up your dukes. Come on. Okay. No, well, again, some of this is pretty explicit. Some of it, you know, there may be some bleeding from one category to another. You know, when I was a kid, antenna, that might have been a tier 1 word when I was a kid because everybody had antennae on their homes, on their houses. You know, you knew what an antenna was before you went to school.
My 2-year-old knows antenna because he likes bugs.
There you go.
So.
Okay.
I mean, in that concept, if you're talking about TVs, they mean 2 different things. If you're talking about TVs, an antenna is more common for people to know, but if you're just talking about bugs, if you're not interested in it, you're not going to know.
Well, there's no more antennas.
Right, and then that's why I'm saying honest child is
Yeah.
exceptional, right?
Yeah.
Because not a lot of kids are reading books about bugs at that early of an age. So you're
He
right.
doesn't read.
That's what I'm saying. When I was a kid, it probably was a tier 1 word because we just knew what it was from growing up in our neighborhood.
But now
you
there's
know.
no antenna.
But now you don't really see it. It's all cable and so
Not
on.
even
Sir,
on
the
phones.
words in tier 3, I mean, they just happen to all be objects. And tier 2, they're more of like an action or, you know, so would that be a key difference as well?
No.
That's an excellent point, but not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Full metamorph.
I'm trying to think. Does anyone here teach science at the high school level? You do? There have to be some actions that are just really
Well, I mean,
confined to
metamorphose.
science.
Metamorphosis is an action. Of some
That's right. It's
something
not
that-
metamorphosis, which is the noun. This is metamorphose,
Yeah.
which is the verb. That's true. Yeah, I don't think so necessarily, but you're making a good point. I would say probably generally that's true. That most tier 3 words would probably be more nouns. Most. Not all, but probably most. That's a good point. I'd have to check on that though. Anybody else? Okay, one more. One more. I don't know if you can see these words, but it's blaze, conflagration, fiery, fire, flame, inferno. They're all related, right? Blaze, conflagration, fiery, fire, flame, inferno. What I'd like for you to do is just very quickly, with your partner, put them into tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. And I will tell you, I'll give you a clue. It's 2, 2, 2. There are 2 words in tier 1, 2 words in 2 and 2, 2, 2 and tier 3.
Fiery would be 2.
What is a bomb?
Configuration would be 3. Blaze would be 2.
Blaze and
They're all fire.
Yeah, but what does it mean?
no.
Because inferno isn't just
Intensity. See, so I would put fire and flame in tier 1. Blaze and fire in tier 2. Inferno conflagration.
Okay, so what do you think? Blaze?
2.
2.
And the answer is 2. Very good. Conflagration?
3.
Really?
I'd say I'm
That's a
down
given.
for 2.
It's 3. Could be maybe 2. You might see it in different ones. But, yeah. Fiery? Two. Fire?
One.
Oh, and everybody responded very quickly. Very good. Flame? One.
Two.
Three. Again, I mean, you know, we want these quick, easy definitions, and I gave you quick, easy definitions, but there is some, you know, you might argue that, well, Inferno, I could see that across areas, right? And so, yeah, that's why I wanted to do that activity too. It's just to show you, you won't have to determine as a teacher, is this a tier 2 or tier 3 word or a tier 1? You won't. You'll be given lists, generally speaking, or you'll have conversations about it. But just as long as we understand. And I think the biggest thing to understand with this is that we tend to teach tier 3 words, and it's tier 2 words that kids have most trouble with. When we look at textbooks, let's say we're teaching science. You know what happens when the word isotope appears for the first time in the reading? It's usually in boldface print. And within the sentence, there's a definition. So when he first discovered isotopes, comma, which are, comma, I mean, these tier 3 words in our readings generally are already defined. We tend to focus our attention on teaching that vocabulary, when in reality, it's the tier 2 words that we may need to spend time on. Yeah? For very young children, it is best to teach new vocabulary after a story is read. There's nothing wrong with front-loading some vocabulary if they really need to learn it in order to understand the overarching idea of the story. But generally, it's best to teach vocabulary after a story. I know that kind of goes contrary to what we tend to think. We tend to think, teach the vocabulary, teach the vocabulary, teach the vocabulary, then we learn. It's very possible. Sometimes you just want to say it. If you're reading a story to the kids, just say the word without even worrying about giving definitions. But if you really feel that you must, while reading, give a brief explanation of some new words, if you really must. The context will help define that. But it's them getting accustomed to it and then having it. So the best words to teach are those that can be explained using other words that students understand, refer to concepts that they understand, and this is the big one, and this is the one that you might want to put an asterisk on. And always it's about making those connections, as we said earlier. And making a connection is partly this, and this really is the big thing. Teach words that are useful and interesting. Why do you think that's important?
So when they write,
For retention.
They don't have a purpose and they have no reason to.
If they have no purpose, there's no motivation to learn it, they're not going to. That's exactly right. I mean, they might the first couple times you try to teach vocabulary, but if they eventually say, how is this improving my life? And it's not, then it's no good. Words that are useful and are interesting. That's how they make the connections. Okay. We're not going to go through this, but it's just kind of a nice little thing there. Verify, organize, communicate, assess, and build your understanding. But that's it for the first part of vocabulary. What do you think? Is it understandable? Yeah? Are we understanding this vocabulary that we're going over? Yeah? Okay. Well then, I tell you what. I know this seems a little strange because we've only been on here for about a half an hour, but if you want to, while I bring up part 4, stand up and move around for about 2 minutes. We have time.
no,
They did. He wanted to get, I tried encouraging him. I tried.
He doesn't need it.
He needs to be wired.
Where's that from?
Seriously, dude?
Oh, it's here.
He has all our stuff.
Okay, so
All right.
we have it, but I haven't seen it from the beginning, so I don't want to start watching it.
It's legit. I'm not gonna lie. This is confiscated.
It's fantasy, right?
I think this is from a 3rd grader.
It's permanent marker.
Because it's a Sharpie. No, they're not supposed to have anything Sharpie on it. Not even highlighters.
What if I have another permanent marker?
Speaking of,
I like watching Becky.
Like what?
I don't know. Brand X.
Brand. If you find that it's permanent marker, yeah, you're talking.
What's wrong with me? Okay, like,
Okay, so what they do is this Sharpie meet desk.
I was gonna say, what if like,
That's
you know they use it responsibly?
It's like I had one kid, he's sitting down, he does this. There's gum. That's why we tell you not to bring gum. Not that it wasn't you. Yeah, but that's why we tell you, everyone not to bring gum. He's like, wash my hands. She has it right.
No, you said you didn't, but I was going to stick to my.
Okay, we're ready to move on then? Looks like you guys are ready. Yeah, I know. Michael Kors, you're dying to use it. We still have comprehension to go. Jeez.
Said to go to work after this.
Are you kidding?
Oh, really? Okay. Well, we'll get through it. We'll get through it, okay? Part 4, we're going to continue on with a little bit of vocabulary. And then we're going to get into, what's the 5th element of?
Comprehension.
Comprehension, that's right. Thank you for reminding me.
Way
Well
to
done,
go,
right?
Randy.
Come on, I'm just answering the question. That's right, very good.
Have him
Okay.
list all of them. Have him list all of them.
Okay. We mentioned this maybe a little bit before, but if really we don't understand a lot of the other stuff, this is what you want to understand about vocabulary development. And this does come out on the assessment as well, about multiple exposures. And again, please don't think that we teach vocabulary on Monday and then we put it away and that's it. No. Vocabulary, multiple exposures. And I'm sorry, what is your name again? Hector. Hector mentioned it a little bit earlier. Using it in your regular vocabulary with students. You know what vocabulary will be coming up. Start using it in your regular speech with the students. Find appropriate times. Find appropriate times. Get the principal to do it too. I did this one time, and I don't know, it was kind of spur of the moment, and then I realized, oh my gosh, the impact it had. So I started to use it a lot more. Is I would use a term, and I'll never forget the first one was chagrined. And I think I said it a couple times, and then it came up as a vocabulary word, and kids are like, chagrined? Really? I've never heard that. Is that really a word type of thing, you know? And nobody ever uses it. And I had asked the principal, seriously, I mean, it wasn't a, it just worked out so well. I asked the principal to please use chagrined in her announcements. And so she did, and she said, and much to my chagrin, I was very chagrined when I saw, and the kids were looking at me, sir, that's right, wow, yeah. You know, they heard it in context, and they had been exposed to it a few times. You should have seen them. They started to say, I feel very chagrined, sir. You know? It was great. So what I'm saying is those multiple exposures, you know, certainly just using it in your conversation, but get other people to use it as well. Deep understanding, that's how that's going to become part of their bone, connected to what they know. What is the magic number? 8. Right. Very good.
And ocean.
Indeed, one of the most enduring findings in reading research is the extent to which students' vocabulary knowledge relates to their comprehension. I mean, that makes sense. If we understand the words, we're going to understand what it's about, right? So weaker vocabularies, less likely to learn words. From listening to stories than children with larger vocabularies, we need to provide more explicit instruction. And I know that we want to, we might see a few more activities. We do want to get to comprehension as well, though. Students should learn about 8,000 new words a year. Jeez, 8,000 words a year? Oh my gosh, look at that second sentence, though. We can only teach 300 to 400. Ah, jeez. Holy cow. We're way behind. What does this mean? What do we do? I mean, they need to learn 8,000 words and we can only teach 400? Maybe 400. 300. Bless you. What can we do?
That's when reading is very important for students to start getting into a habit that they need to read as a pleasure instead of a have to.
Excellent point. Excellent point. We tend to acquire more than we learn. We tend to acquire more than we learn. I'm going to say it 3 times so you'll know this is important, right? We tend to acquire more than we learn. I see a few people like Mireya writing it down. Good for you, Mireya. We tend to acquire, 4th time, we tend to acquire more than we learn. What does that mean for vocabulary? We can only teach, I mean really, 300 to 400 words. Maybe we could go up to 500, meaningfully. But they need to learn 8,000. We need to give them opportunities to
love reading.
That's right. And I'm glad you qualified. We give them opportunities to read. No, to love reading. I agree. We were talking about this a little bit over the break, is that we've gotten to a point, seriously, and I will say I am not the kind, my children, I always have fun with my kids because I am not the kind to say, kids these days, how a lot of old people do that. Back in my day, things were so wonderful. Make America great again. Oh, jeez. Sorry. Okay, I'm recovering. Okay, so, I'm not that kind. I think life is much better now than it used to be in a lot of ways, right? But research would show, too, that there used to be this falling off enjoyment of reading at about 4th grade level. Years ago, about 4th grade. And then it came down to 3rd grade. And now it's down to 2nd and even into 1st grade. Why? Because there's such an emphasis on testing. We tend to say, if you're going to read, we're going to test you on it.
Yep.
What is your name? I'm sorry.
Connie.
Connie. Connie, bravo to you. We must develop this love for reading.
Like my daughter, I've always told her she needs to love to learn, and love to read in order to learn, to progress in life. And that's, she loves to read.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's interesting because with my 2 older daughters, that was kind of enough to say that. And it was fine. With my younger children, we kind of had to separate it out by that time. It was like, love to read. And then it was like, okay, for school, you do that. For here, we love to read. We had to kind of separate it out because there is so much pressure on these kids to just read to answer the questions now and to perform well on tests that we've driven that love of reading out. So giving them opportunities to read will help develop their vocabulary, okay? Won't go into that so much, but just know, and you probably know this, all things on the test make sure activities are active, and that they're suitable at various levels. Okay? Okay, what does anti mean? Or ante, right. So anti is different than ante. Antebellum, what does that mean? Right, before a war. Bellum, bellicose, warrior, you know, before war. Antemeridium? Before what? Before noon. AM, right? Yeah, AM. Anteroom?
Previous room.
Empty room.
What's an anteroom?
Before.
Don't tell me it's before a room.
It's a room in front of something?
There you go. It's a room before you get to the main room. That's right? Kind of like an entryway, you might say, in some places, right? An empty room. So once you know parts of words, then we can figure out what the whole word means. So what does this word mean? You should know this. This is a word. Well, move into a position where you can, because this is on the test. No, I'm kidding. This is not on the
Okay, so
test.
it's long,
Something like a lung.
very small.
Very Something I found in your lungs from a
Something
volcano smoke. From volcano smoke.
Ultra.
And it kills you.
I don't know. Let me put my words on.
It's when you
It has to do with the lungs.
Okay, well, yeah, let's analyze this just a little bit. You know, again, sorry, we tend to teach words, but let's look at this for a second. How can we figure this out?
Separate it.
There you go, breaking it down. There are certain base parts or root parts that we can put together to come up with some type of meaning. So tell me what you know about some of these parts of this word.
Well, pneumo is lung.
Pneumo is lungs. That's right. Pneumo, and in this case, we would almost go up to that second O, pneumono, is lungs, and it comes from Greek,
It falls on your
right? Whenever you see those PN words, it comes from the Greek, but pneumo means lungs. Very good. What else?
It's small.
Microscopic. Okay, I see that in there. What is microscopic?
What's ultra microscopic?
What is it? Very small, very tiny. Very good. So we have pneumo, which is lungs. We have microscopic, which is very tiny. What else? Ultra. Look at that. Right in between pneumono and microscopic, we have that ultra. What does ultra mean? Very or extra, right? Very. So lungs, very very small, very tiny. What else? Silico. What is that?
Silicone.
Silicone, and what is silicone made out of?
Silica.
Which is what?
Particle.
Of? What's the term everybody knows? We see a lot of it at Padre Island. Sand. Right. All those silicon chips and all that, that's made of sand. Right? So, pneumono, lungs, ultra, very or extra, microscopic meaning tiny, tiny, silico, which is sand, okay, the sand particles, as you said. I like that. What else do we see in there?
Volcano.
Volcano, I don't even, that's just volcano. Right? We don't even have to interpret that. We know volcano. But that also comes from Latin, right?
Coniosis.
Okay. Cone. With, but in Greek, do you know what coney means, or cone?
Contagious?
Coney in Greek?
Pointy.
Dust.
Isn't it a
Dust.
Like an ash.
Huh?
Isn't it an inflammation?
Oh my gosh, you're ahead of us. Let's go with the osis first,
Yes,
okay?
yes, yes.
Let's look at osis first. So pneumono is what?
Lungs.
Lungs. Ultra is extra, very microscopic, tiny, little small. Silico, sand. Volcano.
Okay.
Volcano. Okay. Coney, dust. Osis.
Inflammation.
Okay, or the disease of, right? It could be inflammation. It's certainly the condition of, or the condition of a disease. So when we put this all together,
Smoke from the.
because of his proximity to Mount St. Helens, he contracted that word.
A disease.
Pneumo-ultramicroscopic silicovolcanosis.
So smoke or ash in your lungs.
That's it. That's it. But what?
From the disease.
An inflammation of the lungs.
Yeah, he contracted not just the ash, but the disease of the ash from a volcano entering into his lungs.
Is it deadly?
It affected his lungs.
That's right. Okay. Again, what's the purpose of this exercise? It's fun, but also, right? To break it down. There are a lot of words in the English language. And as we said, we can't teach all of them. But if we can teach parts of words, the Greek and Latin roots, and I will tell you, that's part of the TEKS now. Greek and Latin roots of words, if we can teach those, people can learn to understand words through that. Their vocabulary will develop. Right? Can you say that word? Very good, I think. I couldn't really hear you, but I'm sure. Okay, so how not to teach it? Spray and pray. Do you know what that is? Spray and pray. Yeah. You throw the vocabulary out there and hope that they get it. You know? Yeah, throw it out there. I hope it sticks, right? Saying it over and over, not just saying it over and over. In context, many times, repeated exposure, fine. But just repetition, no. Having kids looking up definitions, please do not do that. There's nothing wrong with having kids. I love dictionaries. I have all these dictionaries at home, believe it or not. I mean, lots of them. And I love dictionaries. And I pull them out all the time in different languages and everything, and I love to look at that stuff. But as an approach on a regular basis to give vocabulary words, having kids look them up and writing the definitions, no. And I'll tell you that generally, this is how it will come out on the test as well. You've probably seen this, where it might say, what is one thing not to do to teach vocabulary to your students? And that is, have them write the word and the definition from the book. That is a big no-no. And that does come out on the test. Or you can certainly get rid of it. Okay, we're not going to go into these. I think you probably will see some of these activities in other areas, but have you heard of the Frere model? I guess not, huh? Frere model, I mean, we're not going to do it now, but draw the square with 4 boxes, write a vocabulary word, write your own definition. It should say maybe your own definition. Or lots of times what I've seen is you can write the definition from a book and then put it in your own words. But this is the big thing. These last two, really, these are big. Write a personal association. Again, we talked about those connections. If you can make a connection to the vocabulary, it's going to become more meaningful and useful for you, and that connection will be made for you to remember it. And here's another one, and you might want to write this down. I don't know if you want to or not. I don't know if this will come out on the test. But this is very true, that you ask kids what it is not. You look for either an antonym. I don't know what antonym is.
Opposite.
Yeah, antonym means opposite. I don't know if you always want to ask for something that is opposite of it, but you ask them about what it is not. That's very powerful. Very powerful. A lot of kids can tell you because they've learned the definition from a book or something, and then you ask them, what isn't it? If they can make that switch to say, well, a desk is not a ladder, that's very positive. So we're not going to try it. But this is another one, word lines or linear arrays. You'll see this later on in your comprehension and reading coursework. These word lines are called linear arrays or shades of meaning as well. The term that the state of Texas uses mostly is linear arrays. So I'm just going to write that down so it sounds and looks familiar to you. Linear array. And what that is you put words in order from least to greatest. From here it says slowest to fastest. From smallest to tallest, or whatever it is. So here we have these words: meander, crawl, trudge, amble, saunter, run, sprint, jog, stroll, dash. Normally I'd have all the kids repeat it, and maybe all of you. Well, I tell you what, let's just do it. Right? Please repeat. Meander.
Meander.
Crawl.
Crawl.
Trudge.
Trudge.
Amble.
Amble.
Saunter.
Saunter.
Run.
Run.
Sprint.
Sprint.
Jog.
Jog.
Stroll.
Stroll.
Dash.
Dash.
Good. Okay. What I'd like for you to do, and if you haven't heard of these words, work with your partners. I prefer you don't look them up online at this point, but if you need to, that's all right. I don't really care. We should embrace technology, right? Okay. If you need to, go ahead. But I prefer you try to do this just verbally with your partner. What I want you to do is to put these in order from slowest to fastest. From slowest to fastest. Whoops. Meander, crawl, trudge, amble, saunter, run, sprint, jog, stroll, dash. From slowest to fastest. Okay? Now there are different ways to do it. Lots of times it's the gradual release of responsibility, right? We do it together, then I have you do it. But sometimes it's good to do it on your own, then compare with your neighbors, and then change yours up depending on your conversations, etc. So I'm just going to let you do it with your partners right away. If you want to do it on your own first, that's cool.
Yeah, but if you do that,
I mean, when you go into specifics and you can have a basic cross fast. You know, by that definition.
A crawling has
So does meander.
I would assume that crawl would be
Yeah.
So wouldn't you amble then crawl then?
meanders like a walk, like a slow. See, sprint. See, I put sprint and then dash.
so I don't know what it's
Like a dash to the finish line.
For that, run.
so you're saying ambulance.
How's your listening?
Fast. That's the fastest one.
Did I not just say that to you a little while ago?
Your students don't do that while you're in class. Easy to do this.
Wait, okay, so
Your students don't do that while you're teaching. But you'll do it while I'm teaching.
Like yawning.
I mean, I've written before. I've written everything.
Yeah, I mean,
So
that's why I
what-
said dash would be
when
the
they say that
fastest.
to you, you'll say, okay, good.
No, because they don't have to.
I think dash
So if they
would be
had it,
That's a different story. But they all try to
but it doesn't sound too fast. It sounds medium slow.
So crawl there. What about trudge? TMI. So I have dash being the fastest, no sprint. I got sprint. Because it's like a dash to the finish line. Yeah. And then I just got crawl at the beginning.
Yeah, and then after crawl.
Maybe about 1 more minute?
You guys are underestimating the crawl.
Do you need about 1 more minute? Okay.
Guess the first one.
After a stroll, jog, for the stroll. Yeah, I have no idea what it is. So I'm just gonna. No, I'm watching a video.
Unfortunately, he's waiting for the numbers.
Okay, well, what do you think? What do you think? What would be your order? Crawl is the first? Everybody had crawl first?
Randy got something else.
Hey, don't look at my paper.
Amble next? Anybody have anything different than amble?
Well, I have ambles first.
Trudge? What's the difference between trudge and amble?
Amble is when you ambulate, you're walking, trudging is when you're dragging your feet.
Okay, yeah, trudging is, yeah, dragging your feet, or, you know, I think of Wisconsin, and it wasn't dragging, it was more like stepping through the snow and putting it in, and yeah, there's more difficulty about it. Amble is a little bit smoother, but which one is faster?
Amble.
Amble, so maybe trudge, okay. So, and again, don't even change yours if you don't want to, but you can. I mean, crawl, then maybe trudge, then amble? Yeah? Okay. Then after amble?
Meander.
Meander? Everybody had meander next? Okay, after meander?
Saunter.
Saunter? Okay, after saunter?
Stroll.
Everybody had stroll next?
Jog.
Jog? Run?
Sprint.
Dash? Sprint? Sprint, dash, sprint? Different people had different
Dash at
things?
the end.
Okay. You want the answer?
Yes.
We kind of have it.
What's the fastest?
The fastest?
Sprint.
According to who?
I would
dash.
say dash.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're sprinting already, you're sort of dashing to the other.
Am I wrong?
Put a little more effort into it.
After what?
Sprint, the reason why I say that, and you know, if it's Usain Bolt who is running, that's going to be a lot faster than my dash. Okay, so, but just generally speaking, dash seems to be a little bit more of a quicker burst of speed, whereas sprint could be over a longer period of time. I'm just going to say that's kind of how I interpret it. Okay?
Yes.
And in a way, that's true. Okay? Right. It's just, a dash is just a finite point, definitely, where you go to as quickly as possible. Whereas sprint, yeah, you go quickly, but it could be for a longer period of time, and there's no end destination inherently in the word. So, but the thing is this, in a way it doesn't matter. In a way it doesn't matter. You know what was great about this? Was that everybody was talking about it, and everybody used each term at least a couple of times while you were doing it, and you were having discussions about which one meant slower and which one meant faster, and you were giving your reasons for it. You seemed to, I know this seems funny, but you seemed invested in coming up with an answer, so it was somewhat meaningful to you. That was kind of the point. When we start this, again, gradual release of responsibility, you would do it first to show the kids how to do it, walk, sprint, and jog maybe. And so, okay, I'm thinking, yeah, it'd probably be walk would be the slowest, and then jog and run. Well, jog is a little slower pace, so jog and then run. So we're putting them in order. And then when you give them to finally do it, you want to make sure they're successful, so you give very obvious ones maybe. But after a while, it turns into these discussions, and they're using the vocabulary. So in a period of 5 minutes, you guys were discussing 10 vocabulary words. And again, I know I didn't give it justice for time if this were a real class, but yes.
So I was just out of curiosity, I went to Google, like always.
Okay, so I'm wrong. Here it comes. Sprint is faster than dash.
Yes.
Here we go.
Let me tell you why.
Please do. I love it when people tell me why I'm wrong. Don't we all love that? You're wrong and this is why, Myers. No, I'm kidding.
So
It's Google.
A dash reports to the short race, right? So it's a short race, it's a dash. And then a sprint is a short race, but it's at full speed. See? So the sprint is at full speed.
You
a
didn't
dash
answer the question.
just automatically
It's the same thing.
go fast. Does that make sense?
No.
So dash and then sprint.
Say that a dash is just a race.
I'm a big enough man to say when I'm wrong, but I'm not wrong this time. No, I'm kidding. Thank you for doing that. Now I know. Next time I teach this, I'm just going to shut up and not say anything about what I say. No. Yes.
Different opinion.
Uh-oh, different opinion. You mean Google is not the ultimate opinion?
It makes sense.
Uh-oh, here we go. Here we go. Over here, let's listen. Especially if he validates me, I want you to listen. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Bench.com says different. It's more of a short burst for dash, and sprinting is, like you said, it's a longer distance, so it's faster.
Dash is fast?
Well,
I like your answer better.
Track.
No, I'm kidding. What's, I'm sorry.
Track days, it was a 400 meter and 800 meter dash, and there was a 1 and 200 sprint. So
Yeah, the 100 meters is sprint.
Oh,
fast.
Yeah.
the 100 meter. Really, it's not the 100 meter dash?
I thought it was 100 meters.
I've always heard 100 meter dash.
Yeah, dash can be like
But it's sprint in real track terms. Yeah, no, I mean, no, it's changed since dash. Since your day, it's changed.
Well, because the 800 used to be 800 meter run, then it became the 800 meter dash. People were running it so fast, so it changed a little bit.
Yeah, again, I can certainly admit when I'm wrong, and that's why I say, maybe that's why I said it doesn't matter our answers, because it was generating discussion. But I love this is great. I could certainly be wrong. Can somebody Google Olympic events and just see what it says about 100 meter and see if it says something afterwards? Because seriously, I always thought it was dash and not sprint, but I don't know. I mean, really. I used to run long distance. I never did cross country, but I used to love running. Maybe it's because my father was chasing after me. But no, that wasn't it at all.
Olympic 100 meter dash.
Is that official?
Google gives options as Olympic 100
But
meter
you're
dash
sprinting
time,
in the dash.
Olympic 100 meter dash record.
I'm still arguing it.
So it gives dash as appropriate.
I don't know. I mean, well, I do know that. But I think this is an excellent discussion to determine dash or sprint. And we may never come to a conclusion. Republican or Democrat, I don't know. But anyway, this could generate an excellent discussion in your classrooms as well, right? So. Okay, well, we just wasted all of our time on that, so we're not going to do it. It was not a waste of time. What is your name? I'm sorry.
Sprint.
Your name is Sprint. Oh, man. It's the fastest. What? Jessica. Jessica, I thought it was excellent that you did that. Okay? Okay. Good vocabulary instruction, definitional and contextual information. Always provide that context for it, for our kids. And this is the big thing here. If you need to remember anything for the actual instruction of vocabulary, make it active. Active, multiple exposures, and meaningful. So when you answer questions about vocabulary on your assessment, if they're asking you about a good strategy or a good way to teach it or something, if it is active, if it has multiple exposures to the vocabulary, and if it's meaningful for the students, that's going to be your answer. That's going to be your answer.
Can you repeat that, Charlie?
I can't remember what the heck I said. I'm still trying to think. Dash or sprint? I'm going to get the right answer that verifies exactly how I feel about this. No, I'm kidding. No. On the assessment, and in real life, when we teach, when we discuss vocabulary, if it is active, if we're giving multiple exposures of the vocabulary to the students, and if it's meaningful to the students, that is the right way to go about it. And so you'll see on the assessment questions like, a child is struggling with vocabulary, what is your course of action? Something like that. And in the answer, if you can answer these things, that they're having the students actively involved in it by interacting with one another, by getting up and acting it out, or however. If you're using it multiple times, it's not just a one-shot deal. And if you're doing it in a way that is meaningful, or we could say or motivational, but generally motivational goes to meaningful for the student, then that will be your right answer. Does that make sense? I tell you, it does come out on the test, and you'll know it's wrong right away. Take the words and copy the definitions out of the dictionary. Again, I love dictionaries, but that's not how we teach vocabulary. Yeah? Okay, did that answer your question? Did we get it? Okay. So, insouciant, what does insouciant mean?
Lack of concern.
Very good, lack of concern. We didn't use it throughout this. We should have probably, I should have. Polyglot, did it come back to you at this point?
Multiple languages.
That's right.
You used
So,
it a couple days ago.
Huh?
You used it a couple days ago.
I did.
I'm talking about
In preparation for today. Yeah.
bilingual, monolingual, and then you said polyglot.
And polyglot. Poly means what? Many, multiple. And glot means, I don't know, I guess language in this case. Right? Yeah. So polyglot doesn't mean many languages, though. It is a person who speaks many languages. Okay? Very good. Polyglot. Did it come back to you, Cesar? Yes. All right, cool. Hubris, what did we say hubris was?
Excessive
Pride.
pride, yeah.
Yeah. Excessive pride, thinking you're superior as well. There's a lot of hubris among white supremacists, right? Okay. Generally, hubris leads to a downfall. Okay, so, and again, we should have done this more appropriately. But sagacious, I was surprised. I thought you guys would know that one. God, all my other classes knew it. No, I'm kidding. No. No idea? I guess maybe there's not a real connection, but I see it to,
Saga.
Yeah, saga, sabio, which, no, there's not a connection there, I guess. It's wise. Sagacious is wise. Sagacious. He was a sagacious old leader who knew how to rule his country with justice. Sagacious means wise. Yeah. Yeah, maybe a little intelligent as well. Definitely wise. Okay. So we have an hour and a half to go over 3 hours of stuff here.
Time for break.
It's time for break. Oh, jeez. Well, you don't even have an hour and a half. All those of you who agree with me that dash is faster than sprint, may go on break. The rest of you stay behind and write dash 100 times. Go ahead. We'll see you in 10 minutes. What time is it, sir? 2:15. We'll meet at 2:25.
Oh my god.
I don't care.
International. That was on the street. That was awesome.
Everyone already knows.
Oh, wait, no.
It was on
It was on the street.
They stopped traffic.
The fight?
And the guys look right.
Scary. Like, what if they have but that's one of the reasons. It's not working.
All your extensions.
Oh, my second cord.
No, leave, girl.
My body's not gonna.
I'm too tired.
I know that, yeah, I know. When I'm 40, I'm not gonna be able to do
The one on the board?
so that's why I'm doing this.
That was today?
Outside of the district. Continuing education, it doesn't make sense. Continuing education outside of the parents. I pay workshops.
No, unless I go from Like a word from the masters.
So it doesn't make sense that greenhouse have at least like 3
Such a fight yesterday. No, fight. Yeah, she's a fight yesterday. Didn't see them yesterday? Oh, the one on Facebook. Stupid girls. I thought you were like a boxing. Hey man, they didn't break for the boxing match for a Canelo fight today.
It's like he said it's all from.
Let them be, okay?
Yeah, it's pretty retarded.
That was hilarious.
And this one is expires.
I did like the post from myself. I love watching this.
Every like girl and girlfriend always do balls into her.
Maybe you have to take it out.
No, yeah, I've seen it.
No, the post. Yeah, here it is. Here it is. The Battle of South Coast. By the way, I think that's actually.
Oh my god.
Weight, height, age, that's pretty cool. Did you ever play Worms? Dude, that was classic. I'm losing bracelets. Have you ever been on this one?
I've seen like this up on my feet because I'm like, it's hilarious. The stupid stuff that they play. I'm searching for a bear. What? A bear. Did you play one? Because you can like. This is like trying to switch households, man. You just can't. I mean, to be fair, I'm actually being serious. You can't. 1.5,000. I'm pretty sure that's.
Excuse me. Like class is 8 to 5, and then we have clinic.
Oh, come on. You lose the game. Well, that's because they suck. Nah.
Yo, why?
Seriously. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm content watching it, even though I know it's because I mean, it could be weird. He looks like a guy. Oh, dude, these kids look like they just stare you down. You just stare at them.
What did he say? I don't remember about that. The teacher?
It's like, ¿qué onda, what you looking at? And if you draw your weapon, he comes at you. You're a comic book. Yeah.
Which was the web trip?
Just that really
Oh, I missed.
Yep. Why? It sucks because when I graduated, it was like $80.
You're like, why?
It works.
What's your name?
Is he one? Is he okay? So does he want to help? Because I've been lazy to.
I only have. I know I do. I don't have one because I already buy them, but I have two.
How many? There's 4 modules.
No, there's 4 tabs.
But you want something?
Yeah.
Seven. It's the only one I have.
But I don't have one. I need him.
No, do you mean testing? Testing administration.
Try 2 and 3.
Module 2?
No. Module 7. Module 7, you're going to 4. We'll do 4. I'm going to do it this weekend.
Yeah, we all have but also, we also have cameras up.
Okay, we can take pictures. What? To take a picture? This is stupid.
Hey, man, priorities, sir.
Let me get a stick.
Just put it on the group chat.
Go, you go sit down.
I'll do something.
Stay with me. So
Oh my God.
You sure? I gotta have so I'm going to some type of program. They should have done this kind of shit because we paid for it.
The season changes.
Yes. Break is over. Okay, you heard the man. Back to your places. Come on. Let's go. No, but thank you, Juan. You're absolutely right.
Oh yeah, dash.
Break is over. Yeah, dash back. Yeah. Okay. We are in the final stretch. Okay, we're in the final stretch. We know that there are how many elements of reading? 5, correct? The first one is what? Phonemic awareness. Very good. Dealing with just the sounds in our environment, right? The sounds. And then the second is what? Phonics. Very good. Still dealing with sound, but in relationship to what? The printed word, right? In relationship to letters and to words. Excellent. So we know that there's phonemic awareness and that there is phonics. And then that third one, it's good that it's in the middle because it's kind of that bridge or that link to our end goal. And what is that third one? Fluency, which deals with what? Quickly and accurately read with prosody. Very good. And then we just looked at the fourth one, which was vocabulary. We need to know what words mean in order to be proficient readers. So here we are at the peak. We are. This is it. This is what the whole game is about. Comprehension. The whole shebang. I love that word too. It seemed like such a Wisconsin word, but then I heard people in California using it too. Did you ever hear that down here, shebang?
Yes.
Yeah? Oh, okay, so it's not a Wisconsin word.
Shebang.
Yeah. Okay, the whole shebang. I hear some people say shebangy, but it's shebang, right? Okay, comprehension. And again, I know I said this, but just so we're clear, we don't need to go over a lot of strategies with this today. Just really a basic understanding of what comprehension is and why it's important. We will perhaps look at a couple of strategies, but really just know that without the other stuff in place, right? Without the other stuff in place, if we cannot distinguish sounds in our environment, we're not going to get to phonics. Because those little squiggly lines on a white background aren't going to mean squat to us if we can't hear the difference in sounds, right? And no matter if we can understand the relationship between sound and those squiggly lines, if we are expending all of our cognitive energy on just sounding out words, in other words, if we don't have fluency, it won't get us very far. Vocabulary, we have to know what the words mean, right? So it is somewhat hierarchical and, as we've seen, somewhat sequential. When we teach this stuff, we teach it sequentially somewhat. Vocabulary, we're almost always teaching vocabulary. And we know we acquire more than we learn. So vocabulary, I don't know. Definitely phonemic awareness, and then phonics, and then fluency, right? So comprehension is that end goal. That's what reading is all about. If we don't understand what we're reading, well, then really we may not be reading, right? But we have to have all those other things in place. So comprehension is the goal, but there are also strategies for being able to do it. I love this cartoon. Can you see it? The mother says, you see the child in the bed, and the mother says, and they lived happily ever after. The end. Wasn't that a wonderful story? And the child says, yeah, but now you probably want to ask me 10 multiple choice questions. Unfortunately, you know, it seems like we're doing that way too often. This may be changing very soon. I will tell you this, but this has been true for the last close to 10 years, definitely 9 years, that when we look at the TEKS, right, or the text, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, that's right, and we look under ELAR. Do you know what ELAR stands for the TEKS? English, language, arts, and reading, right? ELAR. The ELAR TEKS. If you look at the TEKS and all the numbers, Really, it's all those processes that we went through already. So then they appended it with all this figure 19. There are no more numbers there. This is figure 19. So you might see in first grade, 1AB, or I should say 1A3 and 1A4 and 1B7 and so on and so forth. But then figure 19 is really all about comprehension. When we look on assessments, or look at assessments, let's say STAR, and we look at what is being assessed, almost all questions deal with figure 19. Comprehension. Comprehension. So that is the end goal of reading, comprehension. So does this look familiar? We've said this about every aspect of our reading principles. Teach the strategies directly, teach them explicitly, teach them systematically. And this is the one, let me just say this, and you might want to write this down if you care to. This is true of all things, but especially with comprehension strategies, okay? This is true of all things, but especially with comprehension strategies. You work on a comprehension strategy somewhat until mastery, and then you move on to another one. Do not, and again you can put not in capital letters, or you can underline it, or box it, or circle it, or if you have a highlight, highlight not. Do not teach multiple strategies at once and expect them to master them. It's an accumulation. It's an accumulation. Now again, as we mentioned before, I'm not trying to say don't expose them to anything. Expose them to multiple strategies, that's fine. But to work on them and to expect mastery, please do them somewhat one at a time. Now, will that be different from a first grader and an 11th grader? Perhaps. But think of it that way. One comprehension strategy pretty much at a time. Yes? Yeah? Do you know what word maps are and bubble maps? Remember those? Those are big and they're nice. But boy, I remember when they kind of first came out, what was happening was teachers were teaching one bubble map strategy on Monday and then a different one on Tuesday, and they were saying, well, you use this one for this, you use this one for that, and then kids were getting confused. You take out a bubble map, you work on that particular one for a while, maybe a week, and then say, okay, we got that one down. Now this week we're going to learn a new bubble map. Same with comprehension strategies. Does that make sense? Again, I'm not trying to limit children, but especially for those kids who need comprehension strategies, you do it like that. Bless you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What are evidence-based comprehension strategies? When are they taught and how are they taught? Well, providing concrete examples. And this is a big one. This is a big one for comprehension strategies as well, using think-alouds. Again, if you want to put an asterisk by that and write the following. We are all proficient readers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Juan, I'm going to include you. I know you're getting your degree next year, but I'm going to include you in this. Because did you know he's like a presidential scholar? Did you know that?
No.
He is. You should know that. I'm not lying. This is true. Dude's a 4.0, close to a 4.0 GPA, right? Well, I mean, that's impressive. I know, right? So I'm going to include him. Yeah. He doesn't quite have his degree yet, but all of us have our degrees, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, let's see, 10, 12, 15, 18, 20, 23, 24, I'm going to count, 25, 28, 29, 30. There are 30 of us here who are proficient readers. We are proficient readers. All of us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a degree, right? We have to know how to read. So in that classroom where we're teaching reading, we should be the most proficient one, right? So think-alouds are extremely important because this is where you're talking to kids about the process of how to understand things. When I come to this part and I see this, I think, okay, I'm going to need to do this in order to understand it well. So I do that and I think, okay, this. And those think-alouds, you're helping the kids follow through so that they're starting to think like that when they read as well. Making connections, hello, we've heard this so many times. Creating mental images, determining importance and summarizing, making inferences and predictions. And we'll be looking at these as we go along. Did I do that too quickly? We'll be seeing these. Yeah? Okay. Does this contradict what I just told you? Does this contradict what I told you about teaching one strategy at a time? If it does, believe me and not them. Right, Jessica? Okay, you just passed. Yeah, you just passed the class. No, I'm serious though. Does this contradict what I said? I don't think so. I don't think so. When we're explicitly teaching, we want to do it basically one at a time. That doesn't mean that as they become more proficient, they're only using one strategy in their heads.
You do the ones before that.
There you go, right? So although we may highlight or focus on one strategy at a time, which is what I kind of said, right? To help clarify and make the strategy explicit, we need to ensure that our students know that strategies don't happen in isolation. So as we're teaching that one strategy in isolation for that week, we can still be talking to the kids. This is another repertoire or another arrow in your quiver of repertoire so that you can comprehend the text. And you'll be using this one along with other ones, but we're focusing on this one this week. Does that make sense? So I hope it doesn't contradict, because that's the reality. We help focus in on one strategy at a time so that we can master it. But the reality is when we're reading, when all of us who are master readers are reading, we're using multiple strategies at once. We don't even consciously think about it anymore. When we are reading, sometimes a book reminds us of something in our background. When something does remind us of our lives, we call that making connections. Connections help us to better understand what we read. And, it makes sense, right? Has anybody here ever been to a quinceañera?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, I just say the word quinceañera and what happens? Wapango. Okay, let's see it. Let's see it, Randy.
I didn't say it.
Oh, who said it? Oh, okay. I still want to see it, Randy. Okay. Do I have a volunteer to dance with Randy? No, okay. But what happens? All of a sudden we get this image. Why? Of a quinceañera in our head. We've experienced it.
It's our background. No, it's like what we know.
We know it. And my family up in Wisconsin and throughout the U.S., I have a dear, dear brother, my oldest brother, John. I love him dearly. He's kind of conservative in his thought. That's all right. He has that right? But I do love him dearly, and I think he loves me too. But if I were to tell him, oh yeah, this Saturday we're going to a quinceañera.
It's like China's bar mitzvah.
He would say, a what? And I'd say, well, a quinceañera, it's when a girl turns 15. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, is it something special? Well, it's like a debutante ball, but it's not really. Oh, okay, yeah, I think I know.
But what about a sweet?
He is a,
Sweet 16?
I'm sorry, sweet 16, like a debutante ball. Yeah.
Oh,
Right?
I've never heard
But
that. I've never heard that way.
What?
What is it?
Debutante ball?
No. Now we sound like your brother.
You're not very sagacious, are you? A debutante ball, yeah, there are different terms. Sweet 16, but we would say a sweet 16 party. But I can guarantee you that a quinceañera is not the same thing as a sweet 16 party, right? And you probably know that. And so you know, we can kind of have somewhat of an idea. I can explain it to John, my brother. That's his name, John. I can explain it to my brother John what a quinceañera is, but I'm going to have to do it in relationship to what he already knows. But he'll never have a real full understanding until he's experienced it, like, and you more than I have, although, boy, I have 3 daughters, and they had their quinceañeras. Their mother insisted, you know, which was nice, but that's why I have to work overtime. So, no, I love this. I'm not doing it just for the money. Okay, no, I'm kidding. But, right, I can explain it to him somewhat, but if he's reading a story and it says, you know, and then the family went to the quinceañera, it'd be the what? You know? And we see quinceañera and all of a sudden we have all this background knowledge to connect and we can make an understanding of it, right? So, with that being said, those connections on a real level, help us to become better readers. That doesn't mean we can't read Shakespeare. It doesn't mean we can't read Call of the Wild by Jack London. We've never experienced being hunted by wolves up in Alaska, I don't think. Has anyone here been hounded by wolves up in Alaska? No. But we can read that, but as more proficient readers. For kids who are struggling, find that culturally relevant, write this down, culturally relevant literature. Culturally relevant literature. Now, why is that important? Again, I'm not trying to say we preclude people from reading things that aren't about ourselves. I want to read about African Americans and by African American authors. I want to read about South America by South American authors. I want to do that stuff. But if I'm struggling with reading, it would probably be good for me to at least start off by reading about things that I can make connections with. We don't see it as much anymore, and I hope we don't go back to it. I'm a little fearful in the present political climate. And again, I don't want to get too political, but I am a little fearful that a lot of good teaching ideas will revert back to poor ones. You know, the reality is that for years and years and years, good Latino, Hispanic, even Valley authors have been ignored in our schools. Renee Saldana, excellent author. Kids start reading Renee Saldana in their classes, they're going to make those connections. Anybody ever read David Rice stuff? Crazy Loco? Oh man, you got to get that book. I was crying at parts, and I'm not even Latino. I was crying at parts. It's just beautiful. But there's a lot of stuff in there.
What's the name of it?
Crazy Loco. David Rice. He's from Weslaco. He's up in Austin with like the Rodriguez guys who work with Quentin Tarantino, the movie guys. But yeah, David Rice. Just excellent stuff. I think it's excellent stuff.
Have you read Brownsville?
No, I have not. By?
Esperanza Rising.
Yeah, Esperanza Rising. Very culturally relevant, right? Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff out there. And what was happening in our schools is, you know, we were all reading stuff by dead white guys, right? I mean, really, that was the case for so long, and we had a lot of struggling students. And again, there's nothing wrong with Shakespeare. I love Shakespeare. But, you know, in order to get to that level of good reading ability, culturally relevant materials are crucial. And again, remember, on the test, they're not talking about ideal situations. They're talking about problematic situations, applying an ideal solution. So we have a Latino child who's a second language learner perhaps, living in the Valley, and he's struggling with comprehension strategies. Would it be a good idea to bring in some culturally relevant material for him to read?
Yes.
Please do so. Did you have a comment or a question? I'm sorry.
Like soccer, hoops, or basketball, you know, what other kids like soccer.
You were talking about this earlier, right? About interests of children. Now, maybe not in class. You and I were talking about it. The interests. Find out what the interests of your kids are. When we say culturally relevant, it's not just, okay, the story better have frijoles in it because they're Latino. That's not what I mean either. It means something that is relevant to their lives. So yes, it could be soccer, right? That's not just a Latino thing. That's an interest of these particular children. You find out what the interests of those children are. For them, that's culturally relevant and meaningful. I didn't offend anybody with that comment, did I? I'm sorry if I did. No, but I hope not. You know, because I will say I've seen this happen. I've seen this happen where we talk to teachers about trying to make it culturally relevant, whatever they're teaching, and they'll say, okay, well, we'll count beans instead of counting candy canes or something.
Oh my God.
No, you know.
Culturally offensive.
Right, so, I mean, that's why I wanted to be, I said that, and I don't mean to offend anyone. Okay? Okay, let's see, creating, am I going to do it here yet? Maybe not. No, not quite yet. We'll do it in a moment, okay? Yeah, maybe even next one. So student-friendly definition, a picture that you make in your mind of something you are reading about to help you understand the story better. I know this seems like almost a duh thing, but when we work with children who are struggling with decoding, when we are working with children who are struggling with vocabulary, this is always good. This is particularly good for those students. Yeah, let's look here. Having them create a picture in their mind. Okay? So I'm going to read something to you. Let me pull it up here. I'm going 21st century, Julia. I have it here. Look at that. Cool. Okay, I'm going to read something to you. And I might read it to you twice, but definitely once. But this is what I want you to do. And wait until I ask you to actually close your eyes so you can read the rest of it first. But you will close your eyes. Then you'll listen to me while I describe something. While I'm describing it and your eyes are closed, they're not closed yet, but when I'm describing it and your eyes are closed, I do want you to create an image in your mind of what I'm reading to you. Then be ready to share that image in your mind when I ask you to open your eyes. You ready? Yes. Are you really? This is gonna, you say and you're ready. I hope you are. Are you ready, Delilah? Delilah's ready. Okay, ready? Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Oh, okay, don't fall asleep. Just close your eyes. Here we go. There lived a green giant whose name was Sam. His hair was the color of strawberry jam. He had one brown and one blue eye, and a beard the color of pumpkin pie. His coat and pants were oh so bright, like a peppermint stick, all red and white. His socks were as yellow as lemon pop. His shoes were as brown as a chocolate drop. His hat was the color of gingerbread, with a tall, tall feather of raspberry red. Open your eyes. Okay. Turn your partner and share what the image in your head was. Okay, so what was the image that you created in your head? And again, you know, all these little activities we've done deserve much more time, of course, but yes.
Oh, they got a pimped out Shrek.
I hope your first graders don't say that. A pimped out Shrek, isn't that, boy, that's very vivid, nicely done. Okay, yeah. But the thing is this. For kids struggling with the reading, if you were to read it and have them visualize it in their head, do you think that would help facilitate them to read it and then to understand it a little bit better?
Yes.
Yeah. Generally, that's the case. So this is what I would like for you to do. With your partner, discuss ways to introduce creating mental images using concrete examples with your kids. Okay? Don't worry, you won't have to model for the class. But I do want you to talk about this with your partner. What? Discuss ways to introduce, how can we create those mental images using concrete examples with our students? And when I say that, maybe some things before the actual reading, right? But go ahead, talk to your partners and see, is that there? Did you get it there? Yeah. The green giant?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, do you understand what you're doing? Go ahead.
I was thinking, I was thinking more like senses. Like, oh, this guy he was surfing.
It also depends on your audience.
And what? Why did that be awesome?
A tsunami? That's what it calls mass destruction. They get mass destruction.
This isn't, we're on planet Earth right now. So, just like things like touch, so scratch.
I think that yeah, that's what I was thinking. I pictured him first. Like that,
oh, there would such a just laying down
But you're not telling me.
on the one I'm thinking, you are on that, you're just like enjoying yourself.
You're 60.
No, you just look at the blue sky, you see the clouds, you see that one was like, oh, it's true. Create imagination.
Maybe Josh was kicking it.
Okay, does anyone want to share? And I hate to break up your conversations because really they didn't go around so much, but I could hear your conversations and it sounded like you were on task and you were really talking about some good ideas. Does anybody want to share what you were discussing with your partner?
Yeah.
Yes, good. Let's hear.
Well, I was using an example maybe of if you're going to teach a lesson in reference to a particular subject in reference, like say for Italy or Rome. Well, you prepare your classroom with props, and then you have your kids come in the morning and they see all these different things on the walls. They can relate as you're teaching them about history about Rome.
Excellent. I mean, as you're reading, you can refer to things in the classroom. Oh, that's making excellent connection. Excellent job. Wonderful. Anybody else?
And then maybe having kids bring stuff, you know, related to the subject you're going to be teaching.
I was thinking like maybe even like if we would say this story, maybe bringing a cake and they're coloring the, like making it to frosting like she said, and then or having the kids draw a picture, you know, right after to see the different kinds of.
So that they relate to it. They relate.
Excellent. Excellent. I think those are the ideas. that they're able to visualize, and in some of the cases that you were saying, actually touch some of the realia there, but to have that visual image of what to expect in their reading, very, very powerful. Yeah, very good. Okay. So student-friendly, determining definitions, determining importance. After reading, deciding what in the text matters a lot and what doesn't. And that can be difficult for some teachers because some teachers will say, well, everything matters. And that's kind of true. But especially for some kids who are struggling, the details, we want to always get to details. But for first, with these kids who are struggling, think about what is the big idea? What is it that the author's trying to say? Tell me, what is it that really matters a lot? You know, as I say, sometimes teachers don't want to say what doesn't matter. There's superfluous information sometimes too. But this is a big one. Summarizing, 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 summarizing. If students can summarize, then that's an indication that they understood what is happening. Even when we talked about fluency, we were saying, what did you understand from the text? Basically, we're asking them to summarize, right? If they are able to summarize. So again, some kids need much more direct instruction about what summarization means. Some kids, you ask them to summarize and they retell the whole story, right? That's not summarization either. Summarization is hitting on the main points. Okay. We need to know what making inferences are, and you probably do, but I need to make sure that you do know what inferences are. What are inferences?
Deduction.
I'm sorry?
Deduction.
Deduction, yes. And what is that?
Educated guess.
Yes, educated guesses based on what?
The author.
On the context.
Based on the evidence given to you. Right? So, you know, this is a very nice room. Would you say this is a very nice room? Sure. That's an opinion, I know. But it's a very nice room. But let's say I left for a moment. I said, okay, work among yourselves. I'll be right back. And you heard me open up the door out front. And I left. And I came back in and I'm all wet. And at that point I have an umbrella and I'm shaking it up and I put it over here. And I'm all wet over here, and what could you infer?
It's raining.
It's raining outside. Did I say it was raining outside?
No.
Can you see there are no windows here? It is a very nice room, but there are no windows to the outside. You are taking the clues that are available and coming up with a conclusion, right? Inferencing is huge in Figure 19. Inferences are huge. And so basically what inferences are things where they're not explicitly stated, but from the clues around, we gather this to be the truth. Okay? For making predictions, and you might want to write this down. You may, don't even write it down. But, well, if you want to, go ahead. Making predictions. Why is this important? Why is making predictions about what you think will happen in a story or about what you're going to read about, why is that important?
So kids can use higher order thinking skills.
How so do they use higher order thinking skills?
Because it's giving them a reason to look forward to the reading.
That's the thing. It gives them a purpose for reading a lot of times. Absolutely. It gives them a purpose. You know, they use higher order thinking skills. Inferencing is higher order. But yeah, once you make a prediction, you're kind of invested. You're kind of invested. Now, what's the danger there?
Different types of students.
What's the danger in making predictions?
Oh, sorry, I was gonna say answer the question. I have to follow through, but.
Yeah. Well,
The
good.
outcome may
Yeah.
not come out.
What's that?
The outcome may not come out as the prediction.
That's right. And then all of a sudden, oh man, I was wrong. I don't want to make any more predictions.
So then they'll be quiet.
Sir, he was wrong in his prediction. He said that he was going to get killed at the end, and he didn't. Oh God, yeah, I was wrong in front of everybody in the class. Yeah, that can happen. So remember, and this is what you want to write down. Before reading, pre-reading, before reading, predictions make sure students know it doesn't matter if they're right or wrong. Pre-reading, making predictions, make sure students know it doesn't matter if they are right or wrong. After reading, we want to be right. After reading, we want to be right in our conclusions. Before reading, predictions don't matter as far as being right or wrong. They matter. They set a purpose for reading. And what we'll see is if you set up a positive environment in your classroom where kids are making those predictions, they're going to be starting to make predictions on their own. And they won't care if they are right or wrong, but you know what happens anyway? They tend to get better and better and better at making predictions. So again, the first time we do this, the same with a lot of things in education, we don't expect mastery the first time we introduce a concept. Later on, okay. Does that make sense? We do pre-reading, we do during reading, we do after reading activities. Pre-reading, it doesn't matter if we're right or wrong. It does matter that we kind of invest ourselves in the outcome though. But it doesn't matter if we're right or wrong. During reading, we want to adjust it so that we become closer to reality. Post-reading, we want to be right. Does that make sense? Is that clear about making predictions? This is huge. This comes out all the time. This will definitely come out on the test. But please make sure that it doesn't matter and that we do not close kids off. It happens a lot where some kids, if they feel like they must be right at the beginning, they won't participate later on. When Enrique got to school this morning, he was smiling with a picture of it in his hands. I knew he was happy about his new baby sister. What? How do we go from smiling with a picture in his hands that I knew he was happy about his new baby sister? How did we infer that?
You saw the picture?
He was smiling?
You saw him smiling.
Well, we knew from other parts of the reading. We didn't know because Texas didn't put it on the slide. But Enrique went to the hospital yesterday. His sister was due to be born soon. He was smiling. He held a picture of a baby. He was happy about his baby sister. We're kind of deducing that, right? I never liked this example so much, but that's what they have. Okay. Comments or questions? No? We've been looking at comprehension for younger students. I know we went through it somewhat quickly, but now we will go through reading comprehension for older students. We have about 50 minutes or so, 55 minutes. Let me ask you a question before we begin. And that question is this. The pre-work or the homework, do we need to go over that before we leave today? Do you have it all right? You know what I'm talking about? The questions and everything? You got it already? Yeah? So we don't need to go over it?
No.
So we can spend our entire time on comprehension? Yeah, cool. We'll just look at a couple more things and we'll do a quick wrap up, okay? So I'll probably be skipping a few slides just to kind of remind us of what this is all about. And again, I'm not saying that to take away importance from this, of course, right? But just so we're aware. I know I've been asking you to interpret different things, but really, what does this indicate about reading? What does this indicate about reading? First of all, do you agree with this statement? Anybody who strongly disagrees with this? What can we infer about reading when we read this?
Giving like meaning to what you're reading.
I'm sorry?
Like how we're giving it meaning. Like we're not just reading to read, we're reading to understand.
Very good. Yeah, absolutely. Comprehension That is the goal. Right? No, I agree. Jessica, say it nice and loud. Yeah, that's another point in your favor. Don't worry. You're well on your way of passing. Okay, you don't need to make the nose any browner. No, that's fine. No, that's an excellent response. What else? What can we infer from this?
That reading should be fun and interacting. And
Yeah.
analyzing it.
Very good. Very good. I agree with that. And the idea is this too. We tend to think of reading as a passive activity. It's not passive. It's receptive. It's receptive. We're receiving the language, but it's not passive. Our brains need to be actively involved. And you might want to write that down. Reading is an active activity. Reading is an active activity. It is not passive. We are simultaneously, we're not just doing it, but simultaneously multitasking, extracting and constructing meaning. We're doing that. We're doing that. Constructivism. Through interaction, oh my gosh, that's very active, isn't it? Interaction. And involvement with the written word. Yeah. So again, we can infer from this, and I would agree, and even if you don't agree, that's how the state of Texas sees it, and all the research and everybody else in the field sees it. Reading is a very active activity. Very active. It is not passive. Okay, so what I want you to do, and this one I am going to ask you just to read it silently to yourselves, and then I'm going to ask you a question about vocabulary. Okay? So go ahead, read this silently to yourself. Okay, seriously, please, con confianza, as they say, vocabulary causing difficulty. Any vocabulary terms that need clarification? Seriously, con confianza. Don't feel like, oh God, I don't know that word and I better not say it in front of people. No, this is the time to say it. Because I want you to comprehend this. I do. And so vocabulary comes first, right? Any vocabulary terms that are causing difficulty, seriously? No? Okay, so then you're ready to go. You've understood it. Yes? Okay. So who's the main character here?
Life on Earth?
Huh?
I would say like life.
Oh man, you know what? You're good already. Don't answer any more questions. So you're really good. You're only... I'm kidding. I love that. How the heck did you come up with that? No, very good. Okay, it could be. Yes. Eric.
A person flying kite.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Jessica, your savior just came. Eric, what is it?
A person flying kite.
A person flying a kite? What?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Read it again, thinking a person flying a kite.
That's not just school.
Oh, wow. Yep. Way to go, Eric.
Give me a bird.
You're gonna be here.
It was a good
Spot
response.
fishing?
Eric already got the answer. Does it make sense now? Yeah. There was no question on vocabulary, was there? We understood all these words. We understood all the words up there. Only Eric was able to, maybe other people too. But we can understand all the words. But if we don't have the background knowledge sometimes to make those connections, it's meaningless. You can do this with a lot of readings, with a lot, believe it or not. There are studies that have been done that compare good readers to poor readers. Good readers is defined by those students who do well on standardized tests, and poor readers is those who do poorly on standardized tests. But it's very interesting. They've done these studies where they take the poor readers who are baseball players, who have played baseball, and they take these smart kids who do well on tests, who haven't played baseball. They give them a passage about baseball. Who does better? The poor readers. Because they have that background knowledge to fill in those holes. Once we know, and I'm glad Eric came up with it, once we know that this is about flying a kite, a newspaper is better than a magazine, we're constantly seeing it now in our heads. Oh, okay, a newspaper, yeah, that paper is better than the glossy magazine paper. And on the seashore is better than on the street. Well, why is that? Well, yeah, because there's a lot of open space rather than power lines, right? Maybe more wind too. Once successful, complications are minimal. We know what those words mean, but now that we know it in the context of a kite, right? Kind of interesting, right? Yes. What is the implication for this? We can break down reading. We know the 5 elements, or the 5 components, but when we're actually reading, there are pre-reading activities, there are during reading activities, and there are post-reading activities. We tend to focus on post-reading activities. We tend to focus on, here's the passage, read it, answer the questions. We look at if they answered the questions well or not. We give them a grade. That's what it has become. And I don't mean to just say that's the only thing. No, good teachers do a lot of things, I know. But we tend to focus in on the post-reading to see, did they get it? The research would show, and again, you should know this because these terms are now coming out even on the assessment, I know, a lot, and definitely in your reading about it. But what the research is showing is that the pre-reading activities are the most crucial ones. The pre-reading activities, all of them are important, of course. Post-reading, during reading, pre-reading, they're all important. And you'll have a class on comprehension in the content areas, and they talk about these areas. But the research is becoming clearer and clearer and clearer that pre-reading activities are the determining factor in students comprehending text or not. Okay? So again, all things being equal, they have the phonemic awareness, they have the phonics, they have the fluency, they're developing the vocabulary. If we focus in on pre-reading activities, that's when we'll find more successful children. Why is that? Because they're making that connection beforehand. There's a huge difference between saying, read chapter 2 and answer the questions when they don't have the context for it, and having a discussion about kite flying before reading this, and then having them answer questions, when is it better to do it? What kind of paper is better, right? Does that make sense? That pre-reading is, and I know I use this word a lot, but jeepers, it's a good word. It's crucial. Pre-reading is the crucial aspect of that reading cycle of before, during, and after. Okay, comments or questions? Oh, there it says, use strategies before, during, and after reading. Right? It's right there. Pre-reading, during reading, post-reading. Preview the text. This is crucial as well. Okay? This is the other thing, and this goes along with the think alouds, and we're really coming to the home stretch here. We're gonna move forward rather quickly. But look at these things. Students who comprehend what they read, this is what they do. Very active. Very active. And that's what we want to teach our students. Be active when you're reading. What happens is this, we talked about this with scaffolding, right? Scaffolding are temporary supports. Temporary supports. We teach a strategy explicitly. That doesn't mean they rely on that strategy forever and ever. After a while, it becomes part of their thinking process, right? Those bubble maps that we talked about a little bit earlier, they're great. Have them use it, have them write it. It's right there, it's very visual, it's very kinesthetic. They do it, but after a couple of years, it becomes automatic in their brains as they're reading. When we read, we are using automatic strategies. This is what we do. This is what we do all the time. We make predictions at a book level, at a chapter level, at a paragraph level, at a sentence level, at a word level. We're making predictions. All of us are good readers. That's what we do. We don't realize it, but we're always confirming and disconfirming what we thought we were going to read, and we move forward. And we're altering the way we're thinking as we read. We just do that stuff automatically now, but these are things that need to be explicitly mentioned to the students, that this is very active. Right? Very, very active. This is another thing, and again, you know, I don't want to just have you put asterisks by things, but I used to have this discussion with a former superintendent, and I liked the man quite a bit. But we'd go to meetings at schools, and we'd talk about different things, and he had asked them how their reading was, and some kids were doing poorly, so he said, well, can they read or not? And they said, well, yes, sir, but, you know, this was a difficult path. Well, can they read or not? If they can read, then they can do well, and they can read. But, you know, it's not quite that. Can you swim? How many of you can swim? I can swim. Okay, we can all, okay, but most of us can swim. Okay, we can swim. And I haven't swum for a while, but I was a decent swimmer, and I like to swim and all that. But if I'm out on a boat, and I'm having a few beers or glasses of wine, and the water starts to get choppy, and I'm not wearing my life vest, and it's dark outside, and I get knocked over, I might not be the best swimmer. Right? So there's swimming, and then there's swimming. There's reading, and there's reading, right? Reading a social studies textbook is not the same as reading a story from your reader. Reading a science book is not the same. Textbook, it's not the same. There are different skills for different types of reading. We have to take those things into consideration as well. Okay. It's more than just asking students questions, right? We do ask students questions, and we want to continue those higher order thinking skills and get to the evaluative and the creative aspects of it. But it's more than that. It's helping them to understand and to enjoy different types of texts. Okay? I'm not going to go over this. I think you can do this pretty much on your own. We talked about learning to read, but now we've gotten to the point of reading to learn. Really there's no fine line between, but we can consider grades K1 and 2. K1 and 2 for learning to read. Okay? K1 and 2, learning to read. Once we get to 3rd grade, why are we reading? To learn. So K through 2, learning to read. 3 through 12, reading to learn. Does that make sense? Yeah? Now again, many of you have expressed the idea that you're teaching at a secondary school and you have kids who can't read. So it could be always learning to read. But at 3rd grade level on up, they need to be reading in order to learn their material. They need to become independent readers. Okay? Develop that background knowledge or tap into that background knowledge. Please make sure that this is on your list of to-do things. Develop, or we could say, or tap into. Develop or tap into background knowledge. They may have background knowledge on it. You don't have to develop it as much as just make sure that they're making those connections. Okay? Won't have to worry about this stuff so much, but as we mentioned, there are pre, during, and post reading strategies. I know I'm going through it quickly, but you have that. We're not going to worry about that, but again, for pre-reading, this is exactly what needs to be done. And we mentioned pre-reading, maybe a lot of the research is starting to point to it. I personally, not personally because my mother told me so, but personally because of the research that I've done and the reading that I've done, feel that these studies showing pre-reading to be the most important aspect of the 3, those are going to be borne out. Pre-reading is just crucial, especially for our struggling readers. And what do we do in pre-reading? We preview the text to activate and use background knowledge and make predictions about the text. I'm not going to worry about those at all, okay? But this is true. Comprehension is the reason for reading. Comprehension is the reason. Research over 30 years has shown, and now it's 40 years, has shown that instruction and comprehension can help students understand what they read, remember, and communicate with others about what they read. And I don't want to go negative here, but just remember, if they don't have their phonemic awareness skills, if they don't have their phonics skills, if they are not fluent, all the comprehension strategies in the world are not going to help that child read. So those things must be in place. But we get to this high level, then we start working on these strategies to help them think about their thinking. What are the 5 components? You should know by now. What are they? Randy, take us home, Randy.
Phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension.
5, right. Okay, good. That's it. Is he the spokesperson for all of you?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll move on. Well done, Mr. Randy. What are the features of effective instruction? I need someone other than Randy. OTR, other than Randy. I'm going to call on OTR here. Who's OTR? What are the effective instruction features? Okay, go ahead.
Explicit instruction.
Now, Randy's not whispering in your ear here, is he?
He's over there.
I know. Okay, let's hear it.
Explicit instructions with modeling.
Be explicit. What does explicit mean? Be open and above board. Make sure it's clear. Good.
Systematic?
Yeah, systematic. Make sure it's in place and you know what you're going to do from one day to the next, and there's a reason for what you're doing.
Practice. multiple opportunities.
Oh, I thought you were telling me, hey, practice. Yeah, you're right though. Yeah, give multiple opportunities to practice. Practice, practice. Does practice make perfect?
No.
But it does make permanent. That's right. Practice makes permanent. Very good. We're like 60% of the way there. Are there any other things?
2 more.
Okay, 2 more. What are they?
Feedback. It has to be immediate and corrective.
Immediate and corrective. Is that a good thing or no, Saul, to have immediate and corrective feedback?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Yes, I know you were a doubter a couple days ago. Maybe you're just saying that to please me now, but I hope you believe it. Immediate and corrective feedback is a positive thing as long as we are positive about it. And
progress monitoring.
What's that all about? What's progress monitoring all about? What? Assessing them, checking on their progress, and not testing, but assessing, right? We can certainly test too, but assessing. And assessment drives. What does assessment drive? Why do we assess?
Instruction.
What does it drive? Thank you very much. Assessment drives instruction. Okay, I'm glad somebody got it. Yes, remember, assessment is there. We don't wait till the end of the year to say, poor Matthew, he can't read and he's going to be retained. We need to be constantly assessing his progress, monitoring his progress, so that we can what? Intervene with all these things that we've seen. If he's having difficulty distinguishing sounds, we intervene to help him distinguish those sounds. If he's having difficulty distinguishing the relationship between sounds and letters, we intervene and we come up with strategies to help that child to learn his phonics. If he is not at 40 words per minute by the end of kindergarten and coming into first grade at 40 words per minute, if he's not there, we need to intervene to help that child get to 50 to 60 words by the end of the year. It's not testing, right, Anna? It's not just testing, it's assessing so that we know what we must do with that child. Yeah? We don't even have to worry about this. Your campus people will tell you how to do it. But working in small groups, we did see a way of how to group our students appropriately, right? One thing I do want to say is we don't just give out busy work, it needs to be meaningful. I know sometimes that's tough and we just want to get the kid off of our back and just say, here, finish these 5 pages, you know. But they really have to be meaningful work structures for the student. What are the 5 elements?
Phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension.
Do we have somewhat, I think I said a few days ago that we may not master it, but if we have somewhat of an idea, if we feel somewhat comfortable with these ideas, we will have met our goal. Do we feel somewhat comfortable knowing what phonemic awareness, what phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension are? Do we feel somewhat comfortable that we see how they work together in order to get kids to the ultimate goal of reading? And we're cool, right?
You teach it better than the university when I learned it.
I'm sorry?
So you teach it better than the
university.
university.
Oh, good. I thought you said they teach it better at the university.
No.
I just spent 12 hours with you, sir. And now that we're done, I'm going to really tell you what I think about you. Yeah, well, please remember that actually we did this in about 11 and a half hours, and this is generally about a 90-hour course. And I tried to just synthesize it to the main points. We really should be doing a lot of activities, and there are so many out there. And, you know, as much as I disagree with some of their definitions, Google is a wonderful resource. Google is a wonderful resource to look for activities and strategies to do to help kids who are struggling. You know what? You're looking at a first grader struggling with phonemic awareness. Google it, you'll get a lot of activities. Colorín Colorado, excellent website. No se ha acabado. Todavía no. No. But I mean, that's an excellent website for the Spanish language arts too. Okay, questions, comments, or concerns? No? Well, truly, good luck to you all. You're in a very worthy profession. Truly, teaching is a wonderful thing. And I don't want to take too much of your time, but there are a lot of reasons to be a teacher. I remember back when I started teaching, a lot of people said, you know what the 3 best things of teaching are?
Spring break, summer, and winter break.
Close. It used to be June, July, and August, right? Yeah. June, July, and August. I like that one too. Yeah, because now we don't even have August, right? But, you know, just personally, and I normally don't get too personal with groups, but I was thinking about this. I have thought about this many times. But I've been in education for a long time, and what was very wonderful, one thing that was wonderful about it, besides the teaching, and I love to see the progress in students and had fun with it too, but my children were always with me. You know? They always went to school with me.
That's why I'm doing that.
And, you know, after school, they would come to my classroom, and they would be with me until we were going home, and we'd have the same vacations. So, I mean, even for family life, I know it's not the best paying job or anything like that, and there can be a lot of frustration because of the demands. But I mean, as far as family life, it's a wonderful thing too. But again, the reason why we're there is not for, you know, having an ease of life with our children. It is about affecting the lives of the children we come into contact with every day. And these are children, and again, I don't mean to get preachy, but geez, this is what it's all about. You know, we cannot put the burden on them. It's our responsibility. And we are taking that responsibility. We're educating ourselves to learn how to do this better. Some kids will learn in spite of us, as we mentioned. But there are a lot of kids out there who need us in the classrooms. They're looking for a good teacher every year they go to school. They're hoping, I hope this year my teacher, seriously, they do. And we need to be those teachers. So good luck to you all. I wish you all the very best. Thank you.